I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
This means something.
I am Locutus of Borg.
I must not fear. And fear is the mind killer.
Get away from her, you
Nerd! Nerd!
I'm Matt Kressel.
And I'm David Mercurio Rivera.
And
this is
Nerd Count.
Okay, welcome to episode 14 of the Nerd Count podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Shiva Kumar. Shiva had just read for us last month at the KGB Fantastic Fiction Reading Series with Fran Wilde. So, Dave, do you want to tell our audience a little bit about our guest?
Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting that we have somebody who is so multifaceted today. He's an actor, an author, a filmmaker. So we have a lot of different interesting things to discuss with him. But Shiva Kumar is the author of the South Asian mythology-inspired science fiction fantasy trilogy, the Lanka Chronicles, comprised of An Awakening, A New Reality, and Path of Destiny. As a screenwriter, Kumar has won numerous awards and Best Screenplay at the Long Island Film Festival for Journey to Babylon. Kumar is also an award-winning documentary filmmaker with several films on PBS, BBC, and Amazon Prime. As an actor, he's appeared in several network shows such as Madam Secretary, Law and Order, SVU, FBI Most Wanted, and Quantico. So welcome, Shiva.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent.
By the way, Shiva, I know that we're just doing an audio podcast, so people listening at home or driving can't see it, but I love admiring people's bookshelves, and I see you have a beautiful bookshelf behind you. It looks much more orderly, and you seem to have a lot more leather bound, or at least it looks like from than I do. But anyway.
Thank you. I actually made sure to put myself in front of this because I am proud of this bookshelf. This is my basement, so nobody gets to see this. So I want to share it whenever I get a chance. And these are all my books that I've been collecting over time. There's two layers. There are books behind this set of books also. Yes, there are some leather-bound books. There's a lot of Indian philosophy and history and culture. And of course, all of my 70s and 80s science fiction and fantasy novels. I was a big, I don't have as much contemporary stuff just because I'm not up on that many of the new contemporary authors, but I was a huge fan back in the day of, well, I see some of those Dune on your shelf, Lord of the Rings, of course, Brian Lumley, the Necromancer series, which I was just, totally into, and a bunch of others. Stephen Donaldson, The Ill-Earth War, and Tales of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. Do you guys know that book?
No, I don't know.
I don't know that one. No.
Wow. Okay, they're amazing. They were pivotal. It's sort of an adult version of The Lord of the Rings when I was in college, and I just couldn't put it down. It's a phenomenal series.
Very cool. So you mentioned that you have a lot of books on Indian philosophy on your shelf. So you were born in New Delhi in India. That's right. Is that right?
Yes.
And you grew up there, and then you came to the U.S. in 1974. Is that right?
It's a little bit more convoluted than that.
Okay.
My father was in the Indian diplomatic service, so every couple of years we would get posted to a new place. So I was born in India, and then we lived in London for the next 4 years of my life. And then we came back to India, and then he was posted to Cairo. So we were in Cairo for the next 4 years of my life. And then I went to boarding school in India for a period of time, which I got kicked out of. That's another story. And I ended up in Bhutan, which is my dad's next posting in 1973. And then he got posted to New York, and I came here in 1974. So that's the full story.
So we had a similar discussion with Fran Wilde, our previous guest, who was visiting her grandmother in Kentucky, and she was had grown up in Philadelphia, and that's a different culture, the Eastern U.S., and going to Kentucky, which is Midwest U.S., but it's still the United States. So you, on the other hand, lived in a lot of different places. So tell us how that like colored your like how did that affect you growing up?
Oof. It was always the outsider everywhere. And this screenplay I've written, Journey to Babylon, essentially is a semi-autobiographical telling of this boy at 16 who was in this country for only 2 years, but who's had all of these backgrounds, and he's always been an outsider everywhere he goes. So in London, I was the Indian kid. In Indian, I was the white kid. In India, I was a white kid. In Cairo, I didn't speak the language. In Bhutan, I was basically this black sheep who'd been kicked out of Indian school, and I sat in a Bhutanese school kind of staring out the window because the medium of education was in Bhutanese, which I didn't speak. And then I came to New York. So I had a lot of mixed background. It's a sink or swim kind of situation. And in all of those places, I was always fighting to kind of be accepted, and you just weren't. So books and libraries and fantasy and stories became my companion through this whole time. And my parents also thought, because I was, how should I put it? There were so many things going on and me trying to adjust that I ended up becoming difficult. So they thought putting me in a boarding school would actually solve that, which is what many people from British and Indian backgrounds thought. You put the kid in a good, strict boarding school and he'll straighten right out. Well, it didn't quite work that way.
Right.
It ended up causing a number of other issues, and in the end, they basically told my parents, "You got to get this kid out of the school. He's no good." So they had to pull
Now,
me out.
I'm curious, and I'm extremely biased because I'm a New Yorker. I grew up on Long Island. I'm like the fourth generation New Yorker. I've lived elsewhere in the United States, but I came back to New York. And I feel like of all the places that I've been, and this includes travel as well, that there's a kind of acceptance of the other in New York more so than other places, in the sense because it's a melting pot. Now, has that been your experience or no? Did you still feel like an outsider when you came here?
Well, I have to say that you're absolutely right. I came here in 1974, and I
Mhm.
don't know if you remember that time period in New York.
I
This
don't
was
because I was born that year, so I don't remember.
Well, when I came here, New York was essentially the movie Warriors. It was like that. I
Yeah,
mean,
yes,
alternate
yes, yeah,
reality,
yeah.
but it was not
70s.
far from the truth. I mean, the
Hmm.
subways were terrible.
Yeah.
The streets and the graffiti was all bad. But I have to say that I felt this world of opportunity opening up in front of me.
Okay.
I was not always the odd one here, or the fact that I was odd was actually perfectly all right because everybody was odd. And I joined a high school in on the Upper East Side on
Hmm.
67th Street and Second Avenue, and
Hmm.
they had just bust. They had been bused the year before, and busing is something they did where they got kids from other neighborhoods, largely out of Harlem, and bust them literally into these genteel
Right.
schools. And
Yeah.
so the place was a cauldron of all kinds of maelstrom of issues. And I was part of the honors program, which is a bunch of, a couple of white kids, one or two black kids, one or two Indian kids, and Chinese kids. And then there was the world out there, and it was wild and woolly. But I fit in because I joined the swim team in high
Mm.
school. I met some Indian kids, but they were Guyanese. They had grown up in Guyana, and they identified with the black community much more than we did. And because of them, I ended up going to Harlem. I ended up joining a martial arts program there. And music, got into American music, which opened up this whole world. I can literally chart all the years of my life through the songs that I heard during that time.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
had such an impact. So the Journey to Babylon script I've written really encompasses this period of this flowering of this boy who's looking to fit in, and he just fits in this very sort of odd little place, New
So
York.
did you was that where you first got an introduction to acting?
Yes.
Was it through high school?
Well, when I was in Bhutan,
Hmm.
because I was literally sitting by myself, and all these other kids would only come for the summer from their, schools because they were not kicked out. I organized over the summer this I guess it's a review. I got all the kids together. We gave everybody scripts and stories and dances and this and that, and we put like this big show together. And I was a master of ceremonies, and I loved the whole process of putting this all together. And I thought, this could be good. So when we came to New York, I joined this program called Talent Unlimited, which was a arts program that happened after school. And it was fine arts, which I was also a painter and artist and illustrator, comic book style. And so I did that, and I got into acting, and this was sort of post Flower Child era, but not that far away. So we would do these plays in New York subways, around in the streets of New York or Central Park, and just people would just come and join, and people throw money, but we were just kids learning to act in these environments.
Did you feel like you were like coming home with that? Like, I know for me, and I don't know if David, you had the same experience, but like when I finally started writing, I felt like, oh yes, this is what I want to do. I love this. It's really hard, but it's really rewarding. Like, did you have an aha moment, or was it sort of like, did it? Because I mean, you've done so much TV, and you're a director and screenplays. Like, what? I guess I'm trying to ask, like, at what point did you realize, oh yeah, this is where I want to go?
Honestly, people like you have always intimidated me because you are writers in your core. You think like a writer. I didn't really come upon this until much later in my life. I did work as a director and a producer and an editor, and I wrote scripts and I directed shows. But writing, like pure, creating these novels was something I never thought I would do. It
Mm.
happened really in 2014. Until
Okay.
then, I had worked on other projects, but 2014, I had a pretty serious health crisis, and
Mm.
I was in the hospital for a period of time. And while I was going through my treatment, I started writing. And in my head, I don't know if you've seen this film. It's called Sita Sings the Blues. It's an animated film about this woman who gets, I guess, her boyfriend leaves her, and she equates the story, and it's got a jazz soundtrack, and she equates the story to Sita with Rama leaving Sita.
Mm.
Uh, and that's made me start thinking about, I wonder if our hero, Rama from the Ramayana, became an older man, a man of about my age. Would he look back at his exploits and feel really happy, or would he regret a lot of things that he did? Because the story, as it's told and as it's come down over time, does show that he has done some pretty bad things in the process of getting to where he needs to go. People who are religious will say, well, God had reasons for doing those things. But if he were a
Hmm.
human being, the things he did would cause him a lot of anxiety, and he would need to find a way to achieve redemption. So that's where it started. So I started writing from that point of view, and I wrote because it became it was my savior. I started writing, and I literally could not stop. And everything about my medical condition just kind of floated away. And my wife was the one who really was focusing on what's happening next, because I just wanted to write. And from 2014 to about mid 2015, I just kept writing until I had something that was equivalent to all three books. And I'd never written before. So that's when I went back and said, so what does writing actually involve? What is first person POV? How does this all work? And I had to really rethink it all after that. So I went back and went to writing groups and showed what I'd done and realized how much work I had to do. So until 2021, I didn't release book one. So it took like 5 to 6 years of me starting to rework it.
So did you find during that period that writing was kind of therapeutic for you?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I guess I'm curious about the kind of impetus, because so you were in the hospital, you went through a health crisis, and something in you said, I need to get this thing down. Like, I'm just curious about that, like that moment where you're like, I need to express this in words. Like, do you remember that, or um
I do. I think what made me realize is time is short,
mhm.
and things could turn on a dime, and they did. and I realized there were many things that I had not done. So, as you saw from my resume, I've done large documentaries for PBS. I've done Holocaust-related documentaries. We have written books on it. I lecture on it at synagogues and at various places on the Holocaust. I mean, I'm a reasonably well-known historian in the area of the Holocaust, but it was really because my partner, Joshua Green, had this as something that was part of his background.
Mhm.
And as a good editor and a filmmaker and somebody who wants to tell the story, I was completely into it. But it made me realize I want to put that same attention into stories that come from my part of the world. And
Mhm.
also because I'm interested in science fiction and fantasy, I wanted to find a way to take our stories, our mythology, our culture, and find a way into the world that I already knew so well, all the books that I'd read. I don't know if you're familiar, there's a writer called Roger Zelazny.
Of
He wrote
course,
a
yeah,
book
of
called,
course.
yes, he wrote a book called Lord of Light, which
Yeah.
was, I
Mhm.
think, a late 70s, early 80s book, I think.
Yep.
But it really took the Siddhartha, the story of the Buddha, and he moved it into a futuristic world where all these people take on personas of Indian gods, but they've become corrupt. And Siddhartha, our main hero, comes to break that corrupt hegemony and turn it into what exactly is what happened in India at that time also. The Buddha started in India as a prince, the Siddhartha, and he said the way Hinduism at that time was being practiced by the Brahmins was not acceptable to the regular people. And so he came up with a new way, which became the Buddha way. Anyway, I read that book and it stuck with me. And I said, there's a way in which I can tell these stories that would be interesting to science fiction, fantasy readers, and mythology lovers at the same time.
That's amazing. You know, I have a quote here from you that I want to just read back to you to see and just get your reaction. I mean, maybe it was in your background information that you sent us, but it's the idea that Indofuturism is not just science fiction and fantasy set in South Asia or with South Asian themes. It's about envisioning a future about where South Asian voices, myths, and imaginations are part of the global human journey. So you want to talk about that quote a little bit? It sounds like what you were just saying, which is that it's an
Yeah.
experience that is something that we can all understand and relate to.
I can literally, on one hand, pick the moments which had such an impact on me, even though they were not what I would have done. But for example, using Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonien Singh in Star Trek was like, wow, it's an Indian character, supposed to be played by a white man. But of course, that's a different point. All the stories I'd read, it basically was a white-centric point of view. The world revolved around how the white world saw itself in the future. Fantasy, Tolkien, you name it, they were all medieval castles and sort of Nordic, Scandinavian, Germanic type of stories. And you didn't see that much about our part of the world. And there's a huge history of stories and great wars and mythologies that are happening in that side of the world, but they don't make it. But then I thought, Wonder Woman was actually part of Greek mythology. Thor was part of Scandinavian mythology. A Black Panther. I mean, these are characters that slowly worked their way into mainstream Western vernacular. And I thought, why can't Hanuman or Jatayu or some of our great heroes work their way into the mainstream of Western thinking? Because they're as exciting. In fact, if you really look at Star Wars and you look at all the main characters in the story, it's almost a retelling of the Ramayana. You have Chewbacca, who's a Hanuman. You have Darth Vader, who is a Ravana. You have Sita, who is, the princess Leia. You have all of the main characters, and the story is told in pretty much the same way. So our mythologies have traveled through, and the monkey, the story of Hanuman, the sun monkey, these are all stories that have traveled for so long. So I felt like it would be wonderful to try to reclaim these traditional stories, but tell them in a new way. So our mythology does not just remain in the past, but becomes a conduit to us seeing ourselves in the future.
Right. I mean, in your new books, your trilogy, the Lanka Chronicles. I mean, it's set in a world where the Earth is underwater, where there's robot sentience, and and the idea is that in that setting, you're trying to tell the story of an Indian myth, right?
Right. So what I kind of tried to extrapolate was that in a potential future that is coming up in the next 50 years, we're going to have an Earth that is going to be pretty exhausted of a lot of its resources. And we're moving much faster now than we ever have in that direction. Southeast Asia, with the amount of people that it has and how low it is towards the waterline, we're going to have a lot of our part of the world that's going to be underwater soon. Food supplies are going to get harder to, and also there are more Indians who are in AI and in computer technology and in space travel than ever before. So I said, there is a good potential that somebody from that part of the world is going to design a rocket ship that is going to get us to our first destination, maybe before anybody else does, and at a lower price. So I was trying to be practical in my approach to this. And if that were the case, how would the world establishment change? India would now become the front of the space race. And I introduced into this world the idea that there is this family, an Elon Musk-like family that had unlimited wealth. And the grandson of that family is my Rama. He's now Dharma. And the story is him as an older man, having gone to another planet and having lost his wife, having fought this battle, and now living with a lot of regret and pain. And he's traveling on this spaceship called Maya, which is a sentient spaceship. And the sentient spaceship is able to recreate events that are going on when he's sleeping through listening to subconscious. And so Maya is the one who's telling us the story of what's happening. And each of the books take us back into the past and then bring us back into the present day of the 23rd century.
I think that's very cool. And I told you last month that, I had heard of the Ramayana before, but I had never read it until recently. And I was kind of blown away by it. I think that obviously, as you said, there's like a lot of parallels in the story that you've seen in other stories, and probably because they borrowed from it, maybe consciously or unconsciously or directly or indirectly. And it just seems to me it's fascinating how these stories just evolve, that there's similar themes throughout. Like you look at all different human cultures and they have these similar themes of like fighting for justice and betrayal and loss and love and
the one who's going to save everybody.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, because you spoke just a minute ago about like Wonder Woman and Thor and things like that, and people are very familiar like with the Amazons and the Norse gods, but they're less. I think in the Western world, or when I say Western world, I'm talking specifically about the culture I'm most familiar with, the United States. I think the people are less familiar with the Ramayana, and so do you find that people, like, when they're approaching this for the first time, is it something like, do they just feel a familiarity with it, or is it harder to approach them with these new myths, or not new, but new to them? Does that make sense? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, do people get that you're riffing off of this ancient mythology?
So I have people who've told me, mostly, first of all, they have to be readers, and our world it's tougher and tougher to find readers, particularly readers who are willing to put the time into reading a trilogy. My Indian readers, or those who are familiar with it, are delighted with how the story still continues to retain the basic philosophy of it, but it's so different.
Okay.
I have a lot of my readers who knew nothing about the Ramayana and read it and just found it to be a fascinating story. Some of them went back and found out what the Ramayana was all about based on my story, which is great. And I think what I wanted it to do was to stand on its own as a story of love, action, adventure, redemption, and all of that stuff. And for those who knew how the Ramayana was originally, this would give them an added sense of, oh, so this is how he is told this part of the story. And it all starts with Rama as an older man looking back on the things of his life. So there's a recollection and a sense of regret and pain. And the Ramayana that we know of in history doesn't really take us that far into the future. He becomes a successful king after he defeats the evil demon, and he rules happily ever after, so to speak. But there were a lot of problems with some of the things that happened later on. And Sita, I don't know if you read to the end of the Ramayana, but he feels that the people were questioning her chastity or her fidelity, and so he has her go through a fire ceremony to prove that she was innocent. So there are parts of the stories that say that she walks through the fire unscathed to show him that she's pure. But another part of the story says that when she walked through the fire, she was so upset that he made her do this, that what emerges from the fire is not Sita, but a Maya Sita. Maya means illusion. An illusory Sita was put on the throne to sit next to him, but it was not the real Sita. So now I took the idea of this Maya Sita and I made Maya my AI spaceship, because she is, in a sense, a kind of a surrogate wife to our leader, because she has now become his receptacle, his mother, his incubator, whatever you want to call it, and is taking him on this journey. So the parallels are there for those who want to think about it or understand it, but it, I think, makes a good story even if you don't know any of it.
I love the idea that we can look at a work of classic literature. I mean, that's what it is, and mythology, and I understand that for a lot of people it's very spiritual and meaningful, and we can look at it, but we can look at it critically and say, hey, he put Sita through this horrible test, and maybe that's not so cool. Right? And then we can talk about that and discuss that, and that's okay. And I like that. I feel like that's one of the most powerful things about literature is that you can take something that we think is beautiful, but maybe we have some issues with or questions about or things we want to expand on or extrapolate and fill that in. So I really like that idea of doing that. I mean, I think I've done some of that in my own work. I don't know, David, is that stuff that you do as well?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask Shiva, you mentioned that you were an actor and a director long before you became a writer. And I'm wondering, how did those experiences inform your career as a writer? I mean, being an actor and a director, how does that affect your writing?
I guess on the positive side, I would say that it allows me to think cinematically. I'm envisioning what it would look like as I'm writing it. On the negative side, what it did was my early drafts of my stories, people said, it's all exterior. We can see exactly what's happening, but we don't know what's happening inside the person's head. So I need to go and spend a lot more time and start thinking in that first person POV, which I had not done, or close third person POV over their shoulder, to really try to get into their head. And it took a while. And I was also writing Journey to Babylon, which was a script, which has a whole other series of needs. And there, people said, it reads like a novel. Are you sure it's a script? I'm like, oh, God. So I had to really work on stripping Journey to Babylon of all of that interior monologue and make it purely about the action. And then in the books, I had to go the other way, where I had to really spend a lot of time focusing on what is this person thinking, and how do you get through that? So
it's
in a
switching
sense,
between media.
yeah, they are very different mediums which have completely different requirements and needs. And it took me a long time to, and even now I'm working through it. I'm my Journey to Babylon has done pretty well, and I'm hoping to get it to the point where I actually make it a film. And I'm entering it into better and better competitions. I'd like to get it into Sundance if possible, but those require, it's like a 1 in a million. So we'll see what happens. But I am using ChatGPT to help me improve, because I tell ChatGPT, listen, I want you to act like you're Nichols or Austin or Sundance, and grade my scripts so that I can see exactly where the issues are. And
interesting.
And when it comes back and gives me that as Sundance would, and it says here you're 7.5 out of 10, I know that I need to go back there and work on it, because it's taking the aggregate of all the scripts that have been presented, and it knows this is what they're looking for. In that sense, I'm okay with it. I mean, I don't want it to help me write, but it does help me understand what it is that I need to do from a script
Well,
writing
how do
point.
you know? Okay, I'm playing devil's advocate here,
Please.
but how do you know? And I have very strong feelings about it. But so don't let this, derail any of the conversation. But how do you know that the opinion that it gives you is correct? Like it says, oh, here's 7.5 out of 10. Why do you trust its opinion?
Well, because I know that it is telling me something that I sort of understand already that I need to do. It's almost like reinforcement of areas that I know are weak, and I need to
Mm.
do a little bit better on that. And then to reinforce that or to put it to the test, I'm going to send it to some of these festivals and to see has my reworking of
How
the script
accurate
brought
is
me
it?
up to a
Yeah.
higher level. And if so,
Yeah.
then I know that I'm asking. The thing about it is, it's a tool. And it's
Hmm.
a tool just like, the typewriter is a tool, or going from Steenbeck editing to video editing is a tool. We just have to be careful how to use it. And there are things it can do. And it's not, I don't see it as a creative tool, but if I ask it the questions I need to how to get, which are the top festivals, which ones should my script be sent to? It's pretty good at that.
Okay.
But I'll leave it at
That's
that
fair.
because it's a controversial issue. And
That's fair. No, it is controversial. And look, people can use whatever tools they want. I mean, for me, I just I worry that, like at least when I search on Google, yes, it's like it's showing me the top 10 results. How do I know those are the quote top 10 results? But generally it'll take me to a page that has the answer that I want.
Mhm.
And that page, that is my reference. I could say, okay, here's the maybe not authoritative source, but unauthoritative source. But like with ChatGPT, I'm like, I don't know where it's getting the sources from. I don't know where it's getting this information. I don't know how it's collated it. I don't know, like it's becoming the sole provider of that information. And to me, that just feels dangerous. And I know I don't want to get derailed on a whole talk about
Mhm.
AI, but it just feels dangerous of putting all of our trust in one tool and one tool alone. But
Unquestionably.
maybe we do that already with Google. So,
Right. I mean, I'm just saying it's a different medium. And again, you have to,
mhm.
when it says these five are the top festivals to get your name into, they're all festivals
Yeah,
I recognize that I've
yeah,
already done the research. So I know that it's not
okay,
making this stuff up. It's not giving me something that's out of the blue, and whether it's 7.5 is actually 7.5 or 8, that
yeah,
that's what I will test. I will see if the points that it's asked me to fix are actually worthy of that change. So I'm just putting it through the test because I just started using it recently just to see where it can help me with these things. And that's it. But it's it's here. It's not going
yeah.
away.
No,
And
it's
so
not going.
it's a
It's
matter
not
of
going
figuring out how to use
away.
it.
It's here, and I played around with it recently. I myself have having a am having a kind of health issue, and I was asking it some health related questions just
Mhm.
to see what kind of responses it would give, and they were reasonable, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And you have to admit that just saying that on in general, when you ask it a question, comes back with relatively reasonable assumptions. Now, you don't have to take any of it fully, but it gives you just another way to say, okay, here's
Mm.
another uh, reinforcement of a particular idea. And as long as that's it's fine. But anyway, we can move on because that's a
Yes,
complicated question. But look, my,
definitely.
my whole story, it's written with a sentient AI. Now that
Sure.
was the world of science fiction, but I thought a lot about Maya, and Maya had become so important to me, and her story and her journey and how she is looking to understand her purpose. Why is she here? What is there a point to this? And if she's sentient, does that mean that there is a purpose? Where does she go? Who is her God? And how does she look at these things? I started going through all of that. And we're in the early stages of where AI is today, but I couldn't help but extrapolate. God, where could this go? How far could we take this? It's scary, but it's also very possible.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Did you
What
ever? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was gonna say, one thing that Matt and I spend a lot of time discussing on this podcast is the actual, writing methodology, writing practice. And you mentioned that you've written now in different mediums. And I'm wondering what your experience is with respect to dialogue. When you're writing dialogue for a screenplay versus writing dialogue in one of your novels. Have you noticed the difference and how you handle that?
I think I have a little bit more flexibility when I'm writing in a screenplay because I can make people sound just like real people and
Right.
cut off
Yep.
sentences halfway through and whatnot. I think when I'm writing in a novel, I tend to have them finish their thoughts a bit more, even though there are character specifics about certain ways in which people will talk. But just to give the reader a little bit more background, I think I probably end up having my characters finish their sentences in a book, whereas in a screenplay, I might have them cut off with three dots and leave it at that
Yeah,
because
that's been my experience as well, that when you're writing in a for a novel or a short story, that the dialogue can't be identical to dialogue in real life, or else it would be unreadable. People don't speak in a neat way, but you need to read your stories in a way that ideas are coming forward in an efficient way.
right.
So as a result, the dialogue tends to get cleaned up a little bit.
I feel
What's your
like,
And
experience? What's your experience, Matt?
yeah, I feel like with uh, a medium like film or TV, that you can do a lot with just expressions, like faces. You know, you could tell if someone's like happy or sad or shocked just from an expression. So you can have that do a lot of the work. Whereas like I used to in my writing, and then I would have like them say something and like she frowned, she swallowed, she choked up. But like what I found lately is I think it might be better, at least for me, to elicit those emotions like through the dialogue itself, like get the
right.
reader to feel it so that like the because if you just out and out say what a character is feeling, I feel like it doesn't have as much effect
No.
it than if you're able to generate that in the reader. And that's a hard thing to do. That's very, very hard to get the reader to feel anything, really. There are tricks, you can do, but to get it to work consistently and regularly and well, I mean, that's an art.
Mm.
And this thing you're talking about, this subtext or this
Hmm.
other layer, which you don't want to overdo. As an actor, you're in a position where you're acting when you're not speaking. It's not your role, but how you're listening to something
Yeah.
and your expression. And you don't want to telegraph things. I watched a show yesterday, which I actually like a lot, but and it was a mystery, and the woman who had something nefarious going on, her eyes shifted a lot when the camera cut to it, and I said, "Oh, she's telegraphing." If she were quieter and didn't do that, and the camera just looked at her, I think it would have been a lot better than her indicating with her eyes that she's doing something nefarious. And also, when we're writing, if we can write it and then let it just stay and ask the reader to imagine what it would be,
Yeah.
that's us respecting the intelligence of the reader. And I think that's the right thing to do.
Mm.
Sometimes we're worried, what if they don't get it? And so
Yeah.
we
What
end
if
up
what if it's
having,
too
I mean, that's the
subtextual?
fault I have.
Yeah.
I over-explain things and I've needed to pull back again and again to not
Yeah.
explain everything.
I vacillate. Now, I want to ask you a very serious acting question. Whenever I watch a film or a TV show and they have a cup of coffee, I can always tell that it's empty. If you watch it, it's just the weight is never right. They're holding it around. I'm like, if that's a full cup of coffee, you would never hold it like that. And I've seen this, once I saw this, I cannot unsee it. It's every TV show, cup of coffee is empty, even though they're supposed to be brand new. So explain to me why they never have full cups of coffee. Is it because they don't want it to spill on the actors?
There may be many explanations for it. I don't, I mean, I would say that I think they would have to make sure continuity wise, if the scene is being done from multiple angles, and you see the cup sometimes, and that's a problem I have. It's full, and then suddenly it's all the way down to the
I'm
end,
even
and
talking
then
about
fills
like
up again.
the coffee cups with the lid on top.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't even tell how much liquid is in there, but they're waving it around like, and I'm like, that's not a full cup of hot coffee,
Well, those are exactly, those are things that we notice, and it's pet peeves. But you're right. These things happen, and I don't honestly know why. If I were to have a cup of coffee, I would at least have a liquid in there, because you're right. I
Yes.
think everything about the weight of it and how you move it matters.
Another thing
So
I noticed, very serious question, is there's always food on the plate, but very rarely do they actually eat it. And that
that
I
is very
understand.
true.
It's because they're doing the scene 20 times and that.
Right, and
But
it's only and the stuff is cold and just
but
disgusting.
they like cut it and they put it towards their mouth and then they stop and go, wait a minute, and they start and I'm like, no, eat the damn food. That looks so good. Uh,
Funny.
very
Yeah,
important questions.
all true. These are
Um,
all issues that we face as actors, trying to make those things feel realistic.
Mm. Yeah,
so
I noticed that we forgot to mention as part of your bio that you were once the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
what?
Right?
Oh, on a show?
Yeah,
Oh,
Is that right?
that was in Madam Secretary.
Okay.
I played the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and then this other actor played the Prime Minister of India, and they were trying to get us both to sign a deal for peace. And that was the same show that Colin Powell, Madeleine Albright, and Hillary Clinton all guest starred on. So
Oh, wow.
that show has been seen a lot because it was one of the big shows at the time. Yeah, so I played, and then in Quantico I played head of Pakistani Secret Service.
Right.
And
You've been
then
typecast as a Pakistani.
yeah, for whatever reason, but it's all good. But then in what was it, in was it Law and Order? SVU, yeah, I play like a smarmy producer with grabby hands at a party, and they think the girl who dies, it has something to do with us, but it's not. And then in FBI Most Wanted, I played like a father of a boy who gets kidnapped, and so it changes.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I saw most of those excerpts on your IMDb page, and I was very impressed that you had such prominent roles in such major TV network shows. So
they're all
that's
small
great.
roles. I mean, it's
Still,
I don't think those are that small. That playing the president of Pakistan is not a small role.
Yeah, and you're on screen for at least a few minutes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you because I'm not an actor. I don't know many actors. I feel like when you're on screen, you're obviously like inhabiting a character. Does that translate into fiction when you're writing a specific character? Is there overlap in the way you imagine, like when you're acting, when you're putting yourself in that role? Do you find that it translates to fiction too?
Absolutely. With the Lanka Chronicles, all my main characters, and even my main villain, I enter into them. I speak as them. I'm imagining I am them as I'm writing it. I'm imagining I'm Arya, the female lead, when I'm writing her. And I'm imagining I am an AI sentient spaceship when I'm writing Maya, because for me, that's the only way I know how to write. I'm not removing myself from it. I'm in the middle of it. So when Dharma has his anxiety, and I notice that they all are aspects of me. So Dharma is the most introspective, most philosophical, most sort of tortured being, but that's part of me. And then his younger brother, who is just this tough, warrior soldier type guy, has a much more kind of let's get it done attitude, and there's that in me too. And then the lead bad guy, I had to give him reasons. Like one of the things in acting, they tell you if you're playing a murderer or a villain, in your mind, you're not thinking of yourself as a villain. You're thinking you have to give yourself rationale for why it is you're doing the things you're doing. And in your mind, you're like, I'm doing this because something has forced me to do it, but I'm not a bad person. So giving them the history and the background so that there is some rationale, some raison d'etre for them to do what it is they're doing, makes them more believable and gives that back and forth between the good guy and the bad guy, so to speak, a lot more nuance and a lot more balance.
100%. Do you ever find when you're writing a character that the character kind of takes over and you were like, no, no, I want the story to go this way, and your character's like, no, this is where I'm going, you know? Do you ever find that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the story does tell you as you get into it, you thought you were going in one way, and suddenly you find yourself going in a completely different direction. And now you're looking at it from the perspective of a character that you had not anticipated writing from, but all of a sudden she makes herself so prominent there, you go into that direction. So yes, that happens a lot. And I love that. That's one of the best, that's a fun of writing, once you create the overall structure and you put your characters in there, now you let them do their walk and talk and you just follow and you try to, you know, clear the path for them as they're going forward.
Well, one thing David mentioned earlier was talking about like your process. I mean, I'm curious specifically about like when you write. Personally, I write in the morning. First thing, I have a cup of coffee, I sit down and I write. Do you have like a routine or?
I don't have a routine. I wrote literally without stop for like a couple of years. And then I spent a lot of time cleaning and reworking and whatnot. Um, and I was working simultaneously on a number of different projects. I was working on Journey to Babylon. I was working on the Lanka Chronicles. I wrote another horror story which I need to go back and finish. Um, but I haven't been writing long enough to feel like I've got a rhythm. I do get up in the morning and I do sort of focus on, actually, I should say, I tend to take care of all the things that need to be cleared out of the way. So the banking issues, answering emails, all of those things. So I feel I have a mentally clean space to start working from. Maybe that's a sort of work schedule, but no, I don't have a particular time, and I'm not always writing.
Mhm.
I've written intros or treatments for about five or six other ideas that I figure when I get done with these, I will jump onto those. I have more project ideas than I have life left, I think.
Right, yeah. I think we all
So,
do. And
yeah.
Yeah.
and do you have like so without getting political about current events, some people have found that the current political situation in the United States is extremely stressful. And my question to you is not about political events necessarily, but like, do you find that it's more difficult to write in the current environment, or I should say, how do you deal with like stress in your life? Like things come up. You mentioned that you had a health issue a few years ago, or like there's things to take care of, or maybe there's a problem. Like, how do you balance that with your creative output?
I've come to the conclusion that I am, and I talk about this with my son all the time, who's also a creative person. What I was going to say is, I am by nature creative. I cannot not be creative. It will
Mhm.
come out. It'll leak out of me in any way. So I have to keep doing it. So yes, circumstances are bad, and I have friends, and we have these political discussions, and I think we're in a pretty dark, dire time. But I also am very interested in our history, our overall human history. I'm fascinated when we find the Denisovans and when we find the Australopithecus man and the Java
Mhm.
man, and we keep pushing our culture further and further back as we find more remnants of earlier hominids, the Neanderthals. So when you put it in perspective like this and you look at this history of millions of years, we are a little drop in the bucket at the moment. Yes, it's a
Right.
scary bucket, but this too shall pass.
Yeah.
I do believe we as human beings in the end will move towards the light, but there's this constant need to push us to the dark, and that will continue. But I hope and I believe that if we surround ourselves with those who think like us, who not like us, I don't mean in an echo chamber, but people who are interested in doing better, raising us to another level, becoming better beings, that's our goal. And all I can do is talk to those who are near me, around me. And I use my fiction to be able
I
to
was just
bring
going to
those
ask
ideas
you,
about.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was just going to ask
Um,
that, like, do you feel that your fiction and fiction in general has the power to change people's minds or bring people to the light, as you say?
it's my little contribution. I don't know. I mean, we live in such a um, fragmented world, and AI has not AI, social media has created these echo chambers where people are only listening to others just like them, and we have polarized ourselves. It's like a pendulum. If you push it all the way to one end, it has to swing to the other end, and so we're in
Yeah.
this very wildly swinging pendulum. And the idea is to get to a point where we can stop that pendulum from swinging wildly so we can just move forward as a human race.
Mm.
But I can, Mahatma Gandhi said this: before you can go change the world, clean out your closet, make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
what you can contribute is all you can do. So my children, I have a grandchild now. The people that I surround myself with, I try to make it a good, healthy environment. And I'm not looking to engage in argumentative politics with people. Hey, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I'm not here to try to change your mind, but I would rather not be associated with that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, fiction and writing and the things I do give me great joy. And I am lucky. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not involved in the day-to-day rigmarole of going to an office and dealing with the politics of the office. I'm doing what I love. When an acting job comes, I do it. Otherwise, I've got tons of writing work to do. I'm an avid tennis player. I'm still playing pretty regularly. I keep healthy in whatever way. We eat well. After my crisis, we changed our whole diet and approach things in a very different way. So, and I'm still married to the woman that I fell in love with 41 years ago. And personally, I have very little to complain about. The world, well, that's another story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say when we went to schedule this podcast, you mentioned you might be on hold for an acting job. What does that mean?
Well, it's actually a kind of surprising thing, and this is the other end of it. Oh, on hold means this is the thing that agents will do. So I have agents who say, "Hey, can you audition for this role?" That the company that wants to hire somebody like me has a casting agent. And the casting agent is the one who puts the call out to people saying, okay, send me all the people who represent this category. And I was up for a job for I guess it's a high-end financial tech company in San Francisco who was looking for a CEO type spokesperson.
Okay.
And I did my first audition. They liked it, and they said, "We'd like you to do a callback." A callback is the second time when they see you.
Wait, so this is a role, like an acting role to like a pretend CEO for the role. Like you're not actually working for a financial company that's
No,
hiring. Okay,
I play a doctor. I can play a
okay,
CEO.
okay. I thought for a second the way you said it, I thought you were saying that there was a financial company that wanted you to play a CEO. I was like, that's weird. Okay, I got it now. Sorry.
No, play a CEO, as in I play a doctor on TV.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did the role. They liked it very much. They put me on. They had me do a callback. Then they put me on hold for this week. But apparently there was some internal struggle because I think some people in the company wanted a different direction to go in, and others wanted to go with me. So they had me call back again, and I went through it all. Then they gave me new copy and had me do it again. Now, after the fifth time of doing it, and my agent was like, "This is really unusual. I mean, either you hire the guy or you don't. What are you doing?" They said, "Well, there are people who are really lobbying for him, and they really want him, and we would love to find a way to do it." So finally, after the sixth callback,
oh wow,
they told me last Thursday that we just couldn't convince whoever it was on the other end, and we're going to go with a different direction. But hey,
their loss
happen also. This is life, Just like you send your work to a publisher and they don't even return your call, So that's part of life. And at this stage in my life, I just can't take that too seriously. I know I was on the other end. I was a director. I had resumes of people, and I had to make decisions on, do we go with this guy or that guy? Do we go, and you make a decision. And sometimes it doesn't help you and their actor figure it out, but they have their reasons for why they're doing it, and you just have to accept that. There's a quick, very short little story I want to tell, going back to the time when we talked about Fran and driving to Kentucky and
Yeah.
so using
Yes.
that. And I told you I've traveled all over the world, right? And lived all over the world. And when I was working in my career, I worked a lot for documentaries for the UN and other places where I would travel because that was something I did. But in my last year of college, when we all got a chance to go on a transfer program to some other part of the world, many of my friends from school went to London or Paris or Vienna or whatever. And there was one project in Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. And that's the one I chose. In 1979, I went to Appalachian State University in Boone, and it was amazing, eye-opening, fantastic experience. It was so different from anything that I'd experienced before. And I learned about a culture that I would never have known otherwise. And it was really a fascinating time. And I just want to mention that, and that also enters into my thinking. So there's places as exotic as Bhutan and Boone, and
Right.
they're all part of what's in my head right now when I think about when my characters come out.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all of our life experiences come out in our creative work, and a lot of the time, at least in my experience, it's not always conscious. And then, you later on, you're like, oh, I think that may have been because of this thing I did or something I read or something I experienced. And so like I feel like someone who has been to all the places that you have been, I imagine that you have this big well to draw from when you're doing your creative work. Is that do you feel that?
I mean, yes, but I think people write from all sorts of points of view.
Mm-hmm.
This is a diverse point of view, but if you really want to hone in on one character who has one type of life,
Yeah.
the breadth of my experience may or may not help me with that. It's the specificity of this one person who lives in Boone, North Carolina. I have to really think about that person and write from that point of view. But you're right. I mean, understanding. I'll put it another way. I don't believe I would have been a writer, or I never considered writing in my 20s and 30s. I just didn't think I had enough life experience to be able to write in a way that understands the human condition. I feel even now, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I think I understand how to look at the human condition better now. And therefore, I think now I can write and I have things to say. I didn't have much to say in my 20s and 30s. I mean,
I kind of agree with you to a certain extent, not about your writing, but about like my own. I feel like, when I first started writing, I was 27, and I felt like in some ways I was faking it. I mean, like I certainly had some deep, profound experiences to draw from, but like, you know, 20 years later now, um, with much more life experience, I feel like, yeah, there's an understanding of human nature and people, and um, it's much more rich and nuanced, I think, than maybe it
Yeah.
was back then.
More genuine. And certainly, I when I started writing, maybe it was more imagination. You're imagining things, and then as you get older, you can draw upon your actual life experience to make it seem more genuine.
No,
So,
which is not to say that there are amazing young writers who've done incredibly well across history. So
yeah,
it's no, I'm not disparaging that at all. I'm just saying I don't think I would have been capable of writing anything of value before
Mm.
a certain stage of my life. And
right.
yeah, but
So Shiva, you have the Lanka Chronicles and your journey to Babylon feature film script that are being one is presently out and available to readers. The Lanka Chronicles, the trilogy, and the Journey to Babylon is you're still shopping it around at the moment.
yes, that is a script that will eventually, I hope, be made into a feature film.
Yeah.
But as a script, I enter it into script writing competitions, and sometimes I have actors come together to read the script in front of an audience, which happened
Oh,
the Long Island Film Festival, and
that's
that was
amazing.
fun to listen to other people reading your words.
Do you want
The
to
one other
give us
thing
the
that I did,
elevator pitch? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh, elevator pitch on Journey to Babylon.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's dazed and confused meets The Namesake in 1976.
I
So
was going to mention The Namesake. It's one of my favorite movies. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So it just imagine that kind of a South Asian take on Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Dazed and Confused with little licorice pizza thrown in
Mhm.
and Mystic what is it, Mystic Pizza? Is that the one? With
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a nuanced coming of age story about a 16-year-old Indian boy who gets invited to a wild, crazy party in Babylon, Long Island, hence Journey to Babylon. And that
Oh,
weekend becomes a
yeah.
crucible of all things that change in his life
I
because
grew up on Long Island.
ah,
Um,
so you know.
so I know Babylon.
Yeah.
Um, where is the party? Down by the water?
It's in a huge mansion that is near the water in Babylon.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it has a huge swimming pool, and it was just it's like a Dazed and Confused, a night that everything happens, and all of it is allegorical and symbolic, but it's also real. And it's him trying to figure out where he fits in because he's still an Indian kid who's trying to figure out where he fits into the American dream. So he writes his own story uh, at the end
That's
of it.
that's amazing. And the namesake is sort of the converse. It's a Bengali kid who is so Americanized that he kind of has rejected his cultural roots. And then as the movie progresses, he comes to embrace it by the end of the movie. So
Right.
very, I'm interested in seeing Journey to Babylon just
Uh,
based on that description. So very exciting.
And
I
the
was going
one
to say
thing I
one
will
other thing is
say,
that
oh, go ahead, please.
just that when you were talking about the Lanka Chronicles, the one
Hmm.
other thing I did, which I enjoyed a lot, I don't know how many of our writer group does that, but I did the audiobook for Journey to Babylon as the narrator also and as the engineer who put it together. That was a great experience. And I just entered it into a couple of reviews, audiobook reviews, and it came back, you know, I got a good review from it. I don't know. Apparently, a lot of people do follow audiobooks. I've never really listened to a book in audio, but it's a huge thing. So I
Hmm.
took The Awakening, book one, and I made an audiobook of it, and it's available now on Audible and Spotify and Amazon, I
Mhm.
guess. But that
Terrific.
was a fun experience. Now AI can do it. I mean, I did it myself, but it took 3 to 4 months of hard day-to-day work of sitting there and putting it
Sure.
together, cleaning it up and making it all work and adding the sound effects that I needed to create the feel of it. And but it was a great experience. I loved it.
Wonderful. So tell us about the other projects that you're working on. I see that you mentioned the horror fantasy novel that's in the works.
Yes, I've actually completed it, but I went to I guess a reviewer slash editor who went through it and I need to go and clean it up. But it's called Ratri the Cursed, and it's also my whole stories are all about taking Indian mythology and trying to find um, genres that work here. And so it's imagine the species meets the mummy. It's
Mhm.
this is what that is. It's a
Okay.
story about an ancient demon succubus that has been imprisoned underground for millennia. And in the 1700s, when a British troop is running for their lives, and one of them was half Indian, half British, and many of the Indian in the British groups were, half Indian, and he ends up by mistake releasing from this temple the succubus who comes out and basically kills everybody, but he escapes.
Hmm.
And he continues to survive and has children, and she's been pursuing them. The last person she ends up realizing is the one who could release her from her curse is this 20-year-old rock and roll musician in the East Village in 1980 who's just playing his music and having a good time. And suddenly he starts dreaming about this crazy being that is pursuing him. And in
Hmm.
short order, through the book, he has to figure out who he is, where he comes from, what his background is, and how does he fight this demon. And we
Mhm.
also have a police detective team that is trying to figure out on all these murders where people are dying with all the entire body and flesh and blood all sucked out of them. They look like desiccated mummies, and they're
Uh-huh.
found in the East River and whatnot. So you got a police procedural, you got this kind of a spiritual, horror thing going on, and you've got this kid in the middle of it who's trying to figure out where he fits into all of this.
And this is complete, or it's a work in
This is
progress?
it's finished. I just have
Okay.
to go back in and clean it all up and get it ready
Okay.
to get out there.
Do you have a publisher in mind? I mean, have you haven't sent you like don't know where you're going to send it yet?
Very early on, I sent it out, but it was not ready. But now I think I am a better writer. I understand what needs to be done, and I just need to go back in and fix it. But I self-published the Lanka Chronicles because when I sent it out to people, nobody was interested. So hopefully, maybe with Rathri the Cursed, maybe I'll be able to find a publisher interested in it.
Okay.
And then what's next after that? Do you have another idea in mind for a book or a story or something?
Yeah, I'm thinking I might explore historical fiction. I just came across this story, which was fascinating. It's a Wikipedia story about a British soldier, a real British soldier who deserted the army, knew the ways of the Indians so well that he basically turned himself into an Indian and walked into what is now Pakistan and was one of the first people to discover the ruins of the Harappa Mohenjo-daro culture, the Indus Valley civilization. He brought back a number of coins and pottery shards, and then he wrote a small little booklet on it, but he couldn't use his real name because he had deserted. He had changed his name completely. And so he wrote it under false name. But this story, and later on, they found out that he was, in fact, one of the persons who found this setup. He also drew some pictures of it. Fascinating story. I think this could make an incredible historical fiction novel. So I'm kind of letting that sift in my brain.
Very cool. So I think we're coming up on about an hour. So we're approaching the end of the podcast. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to address?
No, I'm very appreciative. You know, both of you, I've looked at your resumes and I've seen how many things you've both done. So it's a pleasure to sit and talk with like-minded people, but also people who've done so much in this world. So I appreciate it.
We just love having creative people on the show, and you know, like I think it's really fascinating too to get like a perspective of someone who works in a different creative area. Obviously, you're a writer, you write fiction, but also the acting too. And you said you're an artist, so it's interesting just to hear like how you approach, you know, different mediums creatively and how that affects your, you know, work from transferring from one to the other.
I always get a little bit inspired when I talk to somebody who's artistic in other mediums as well as writing. So
as I said, I think creativity is something that it'll leak out. If you couldn't write, you would find some other way, because if it's in you, it'll come out. It has to come out.
Yeah.
You can't sublimate it for too long.
Like when I was a kid, I just would constantly draw on like my notebooks and scribble in the margins and have like, and I'd be telling stories in my head constantly, just telling myself stories. And then one day I'm like, why don't I write this down? You know, what am I doing? I need to write this down.
Yeah,
but,
I used to write plays that were performed by kids in the neighborhood when I was very little, and also wrote my own comic books and drew my own comic books when I was very little.
My character in Journey to Babylon does that. He's constantly, you know, creating these characters, these stories. The sort of premise of that is that boy who is writing these stories eventually, as he gets older, writes the Lanka Chronicles, but he's already creating the characters. He's drawing Hanuman in space fantasy. He's drawing Jatayu fighting with, you know, and he's creating these characters in those days, but he doesn't know what this is all going to lead to, but he knows it's something he must do. And finally, in 2014, I started writing this down, putting it together.
That's great.
Very cool. Well, Shiva, really, thank you so much for joining us on the Nerd Count. As we said before we started recording, we like to do our sign off, where we count down from 3, 2, 1, and then say farewell, nerds, where we draw out nerds. So if you will join us for that, are you ready, Dave? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Farewell, nerds. All right.
Okay, that may be the best one we ever did. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Shiva. Thanks everyone.
Shiva. A lot of fun. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. You have been listening to the Nerd Count podcast. That's our show. But if you want more shows, check us out at nerdcountpodcast.com or your favorite podcasting site. See you next time.
Get those nerds!